Hey everyone, welcome back to Shop Life. Those of you that are new to this channel, my name is Jason. If you guys haven't been able to tell already, I love the E46. It's my favorite chassis. And behind me today, we have this E46 M3. So this is not just any M3. One of my buddies actually bought this from Copart in Charleston, South Carolina, sight unseen. And I didn't even know about the car until he had already bought it. And he gave me a call. He's like, hey, you know, I think this is pretty close to you. Can you go check it out and let's do some work on it? And you know, for me, anything with that E46 M3, I'm gonna be like, of course. So we went and got it, and it was definitely not what we had expected. This seems to be like a running theme lately on this channel. We had that E46 M3, our E46 M3 that we got from Copart, sight unseen as well. That was very not what we expected. And that's the same thing for this car. So today we're gonna go over estimating how much it's gonna cost to actually repair this E46 M3. So a little bit about the car. It's a 2006 M3. It's pretty loaded. I mean, it's got everything, almost every option on it, except for competition pack. For those of you that are not familiar with the E46 chassis, the E46 M3 is the top of the line, and 2006 was the last production year for these cars. So this is a very desirable car, and the desire for any M3, any M car actually, has gone up severely in the last couple of years. So most M3s, 2 to 3 years ago, you could probably still find an E46 M3, probably 2005, 2006, for around 14 to 15,000, relatively clean, relatively low miles. And that is kind of unheard of at this point. So this one is an SMG, non-competition, but it's got pretty much every other option. And it's got a very good color combo. It's black on Imola red interior. So like I said, it is SMG, so it does have, you know, the SMG quirks and stuff, but it only has 125,000 miles. So let's take a look around the car and see what condition it's in. So before I tell you guys the winning bid on this car, let's take a quick look at all of the damage. And I want you guys to comment down below what you think the winning bid was. So it was listed as a running and driving car, and the primary damage was the rear end. So we're gonna start there. So we're at the back of the car, and obviously we're missing the rear bumper. So this was actually pictured, it was just like this. I didn't actually know what the car looked like or anything until my buddy had already bought it. So I did see that the trunk wasn't closing, and that did start raising a couple of concerns for me. When the trunk's not closed, that usually means that the latch is not lining up. There's a couple of things that can happen. The trunk could be bent itself if it was hit like right here, or this lower section is bent. And usually when this lower section, this I believe it's called the tail panel, when this is bent, it's gonna cost a little bit more to repair because it's not something that you can just simply unbolt and replace. You actually have to start cutting stuff, and you have to weld in new panels and stuff or pull it. So yeah, that's where it really gets a little bit dicey. My buddy thought that it was mostly going to be just a back bumper and some taillight issues because we're missing that left taillight. And then also, you know, maybe some minor body work as well. But let's take a look at the actual damage section. So here you can see this is where the bulk of the damage occurred. It was on this side. And what you really can't see on pictures, maybe not even on the camera until we get some close-ups, is this whole section is bent in. So right above this reinforcement bar, all of this stuff got bent in. This whole tail panel is bent up. That's why the tail light does not fit anymore, because there's no way for it to fit. Everything's a little crunched up right here, and you can already see it right here as well. There's a whole kink. So this is a lot more extensive damage than, you know, what would be seen on pictures. And this is why I'll usually tell people, if you're going to be buying a car to fix up on Copart or any insurance auction for that matter, you want to make sure you're able to look at it and at least get a whole visual of how everything is, not just from the pictures. So let's open the trunk and you'll be able to see more of the damage. So as any car enthusiast, my buddy did not buy this car to flip it. He actually bought it as his own project car. And that's why he's already started collecting parts. So we've got a big brake kit, some Hawk racing pads. So he's already starting to collect parts. So we're gonna be doing quite a bit of stuff on here, quite a bit of mods. Try to get this car the way he wants it to be spec'd. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel to see all of those videos in the very near future. Now back to the damage. So the car is exactly how we got it. This weather strip was already pulled off. Only thing that we've taken off is some tape and stuff that was covering this area. But you can see in here, this little frame rail leg, chassis leg, is also kinked right here, which is actually not too bad because you can buy a replacement section for this And these are meant to kink in different areas. That way, you know, it doesn't transfer all of the shock into the cabin. But when you're looking further down, this whole leg is actually pretty straight the rest of the way. The main damage occurred right here. And also when you're following this whole tail panel where the latch actually, where the trunk latch attaches to, all of this stuff is bent in on this side. So this side is not too bad because most of the damage occurred over there. But because all that stuff started caving in, all of this is not lined up anymore. So this whole section will either have to be pulled out or actually cut and then replaced and have everything lined up. But while we're back here, there is one goodie that was on this car that was not really, you know, seen in the pictures, which is this Dinan exhaust. So we've got the Dinan muffler, and we'll see more about that once we get the car up on the lift. So the trunk itself is actually not that badly damaged. There's a few scuffs, there's a little dent right here as well, where the damage probably, or where the impact occurred. But my main concern with this being a black car, as you guys know, black paint tends to not fare very well in the sun. And that's also something that you're not gonna be able to see in pictures unless the clear coat's just peeling off completely. There's so much clear coat failure, and the main sign that you can see right away is on this trunk. There's little scratches in there, and I'm not talking about swirl marks or anything like that. I'm talking about the scratches that occur once the clear coat is in like the beginning stages of failure. And this is all over the whole top sections of the car. So the roof, the trunk, the top of the fenders is just really bad. And that's something that you would not have ever been able to tell through pictures unless there were some really good close-up shots. But I mean, that's something that can be, you know, fairly easily fixed with a repaint. But the trunk itself, like I said, is actually not damaged, not kinked anywhere or anything like that. So that's a good thing. At least you don't have to replace that. Now, while we're going across this way, you'll be able to see more of the damage on this quarter panel. But the good thing is there were no actual kinks on the actual wheel well section at all. So this section of the quarter panel, all that seems fine, but it does seem like the bend and the impact started deforming this section right here. So you can see there's a kink that occurred right here. And as you go further down, you can see all of this is also damaged. But one good thing is, since the whole quarter panel is not damaged, the whole quarter panel should not have to be replaced. They might have to blend into it and whatnot. And I did get a couple of estimates for all of the bodywork on here. So once we're done looking at the rest of the damage, I will let you guys know how much that's going to be as well. So with any car this age, so 2006, that's still a 15, 16-year-old car. All the rubbers, which is a very common thing on the E46s, all of this weather strips and everything is all gooey and melted. That's a very common, and there are replacements for that, so that's not that big of a deal. But I think the best part of this car, honestly, is the interior. It looks so good. It's very clean, like Imola red interior, and there's really no damage on any of the seats, door panels, nothing like that. None of the airbags popped out, so that's also a good thing, you know, saves them some money there. But yeah, it's just really clean overall. But as we're going this way, another thing that was pictured that you could tell right away is the mirror was broken off. So the mirror is still here, but it was just hanging right here. And because it was hanging right there, while they were moving around in the auction site, all of this got scratched up. It's not really too dented, so it actually might be able to get buffed out. There might be a couple of remnants left, like little deeper scratches that you can't buff out, but that's something that, you know, something that you might have to expect whenever you see something like this. Like anything that's hanging around the bodywork that could be just flopping around and hitting other parts are gonna cause more damage. So I'm not sure if the camera's picking it up, but all of this clear coat has failed. So you can see like little scratches inside the clear coat, and that's usually where it's gonna start actually eventually peeling off. And it's not just this top section or just the trunk, you can also start seeing it on the actual pillars itself. So there was no damage listed on the front of the car, but once we got to pick up the car, I did notice that the bumper was not really sitting right. And that's probably because of, you know, damage that occurred at the auction yard when they're picking up with the forklift and stuff like that. You could tell there was already road rash on here. So eventually the bumper was gonna have to be replaced, but this is also gonna be a cost to get the car, you know, back on the road in clean condition. So let's take a look and see how it looks. So this side is not too bad. You can just see it's not really lined up that well. But as you're coming this way, you can see that the bracket that actually holds the bumper onto the reinforcement bar is actually broken off. And that's why this bumper just keeps wanting to pop right off. And you can also see how bad the clear coat failure is on the bumper itself. So it's gonna have to be replaced anyways. So it's not that big of a deal. But now you can tell that there was actually a clear bra on the front of this car at one point, because this front section of the hood does not have the same amount of clear coat failure as the rest of the hood. So that pretty much takes care of most of the cosmetic damage that's on this car. And that's what anybody would estimate as far as repairs go before we get into any of the maintenance stuff. So the winning bid on this car was actually $14,000, which is pretty high, even considering today's market. And the reason, my buddy even went with that high of a number, he really wanted an E46 M3, especially a late year model one with the color combo and whatnot. But the spot where he went wrong, and which he also kind of regrets, is he didn't know about the clear coat damage. He didn't know about the extent of the damage in the rear either. So as far as estimates go, I've got a couple of estimates from body shops to repair that quarter panel and tail panel section. And we're looking at around $5,000 to $6,000 at a specialized shop to repair most of that damage. And also replacing the rear bumper, tail light, and all of that. So that's a pretty big cost that's unexpected. And that's something that you just have to figure into it whenever you're buying something from an auction site. But now let's get it up on the lift. I'll go over some of the goodies that are on this car, as well as some of the maintenance that still needs to be performed as well. Whatever it is, you can't go wrong with the E46 M3 though, especially black on red. Only thing that would make it better would be if it was Alpine white on red. Alpine white, that's my favorite color. All right, so we're just gonna start out at the front. I'm sure most of the E46 enthusiasts already noticed the competition pack wheels. So these are actually original competition wheels. They're not the replicas. So that's a great sign. I mean, that's something that he would have wanted to, put on the car in the future. He already got it with it, which is amazing. But I think that's where all of mods end. That's really it. There's no other mods on this car, just the wheels and the muffler. So everything else is bone stock, which is also a good thing, because the less people that have touched the car, even if it is in terms of big maintenance items, the better, because that's less of a chance for something else to have been repaired improperly or just broken in general. So let's get underneath the car and take a look. So one thing I forgot to mention is this car does run and drive. We were able to drive it into the shop, but there's some caveats with that as well. And sometimes Copart does just write that on the listing. The car is able to move forward and backward like our E46 M3 was, and they will just list it as running and driving even though it really doesn't. So our E46 M3 was like that. Fortunately, this one does actually run and drive, but there are some issues with that which we'll address here shortly. Now, while we're underneath the car, one thing I always love to see is all the plastic covers. So all the plastic covers are here. The transmission cover, the engine splash shield, even this aluminum shield is actually intact. There's not really any gouges out of it anywhere. That's always a great sign. But like I said before, everything is bone stock. So control arms, tie rods, suspension, struts, everything looks like it's bone stock, it's never been touched. The oil pan is starting to leak. Even before I take off the covers, I can already tell that sweating around the actual pan section and even around the drain bolt and all of that. So that's something that we will probably end up addressing here when we're getting all this. But this front bumper, you could tell right here how it's all cracked. I mean, it's pretty much, it needs to be replaced. That's all it is at the end of the day. And we're missing this.
Oh my God, be careful, there's a spider right there.
Oh, that's living. So yeah, but we do have some damage here where the fender liner goes. Even this section right here has popped out. But that's something that's very minor. That's not really anything structural, so it shouldn't be a problem. But everything else is stock. I mean, the exhaust headers are stock. Fortunately, the catalytic converters are still here. Nobody tore those out. The second section is also stock. So even the SMG transmission seems to be untouched, but not for long.
You can't wait.
Oh. I wink anyways. Everybody already sees it. Even when I'm just talking normally, I somehow wink.
But you don't know how to do it on command?
I can't do it on, let me see.
No. Why move your face?
Okay, whatever. All right, but as we're going down, there's really not much else to see here except for some maintenance that we are going to have to take care of that would not be considered regular maintenance. And that's this rear differential area. So there is caked on oil residue, differential fluid residue. That is fairly common. The differential seals do tend to leak, but that's something that's not considered regular maintenance, so we are going to have to repair that. But when we're doing that SMG stuff, we should be able to tackle that as well. Now, the only other mod that we did know about is this Dinan muffler, which is good. It's not too loud, but it is much louder than stock. So this is always a good, tasteful upgrade, and a lot of people find this very desirable.
You sure the exhaust is not welded to the headers?
Nobody else has touched this yet, thankfully. So exhaust, everything, it is a little rusty, but it will come off. All right, so let's figure out how much all this is gonna cost. All right, so now, like I said, that it does run and drive, but there was a caveat to that. So the engine is making a weird noise. I think it's from the vanos section. It could also be just as simple as a pulley or whatnot. I'm gonna let you guys hear it. Hopefully the camera picks it up, but that's something that we're also gonna have to address that was not written on the listing, which you couldn't expect, but let's see how it sounds. Now, even though the S54 is an amazing engine, especially for its time, it was such a great engine, it does have its drawbacks. We have a whole video going over all the S54 issues and common problems, so none of that stuff has been addressed on this car. So even the rear subframe, I did already check that as far as, without pulling it off. No issues there as far as there's no cracks or anything. The vanos, that's the next big problem on the S54, has not been addressed either. And that's where I'm suspecting the noise that y'all are about to hear when I turn this car on is coming from. So let's hear it. Let's see how it sounds. Ready? I hear it. You don't hear that whining and ticking? That loud. It's so loud. Oh man. Since I have the mic on me, I try to get close to it and hopefully y'all could hear it. It's very loud. And that seems to be a thing. Whenever you're buying a running and driving car, still you want to make sure mechanically it's good. Just because it has running and driving doesn't mean that it's good to go. And that's the case with this engine. So I'm assuming most of that noise is from the vanos itself, which we're going to tackle later on. But it could also be from a pulley or something else internal. It's almost like a groaning and ticking all mixed into one, which is not a common vanos issue. The common noise you're going to hear is like marbles in a can, kind of a rattling when you rev it up, stuff like that. You don't hear this kind of noise that often. But I'm sure we'll get to the bottom of it. And that's one thing that the owner wants to do. So we're not going to do really much of the cosmetic stuff. We're going to get all the mechanical stuff done first. And then he's going to do the cosmetic stuff once he gets the car back to him. So he actually does not live anywhere near here. So he's going to have to get the car towed back to him. And then he's going to figure out that stuff later on. But that's one thing I did do. I got him some estimates for all the repairs as far as cosmetic stuff goes. That way he has an idea of what it's going to cost. Now, let's go make a list of pretty much everything that this car needs. All right, so a couple of other issues that we did not go over. Interior-wise, the center console has a broken section where the emergency light thing goes. So the center console is also going to have to be replaced. The e-brake handle does not seem to be sitting firm either. That's also going to be replaced. So that's stuff that's going to be necessary before the car is running and driving. And as far as the cosmetics go, we're going to give an estimate that I received from a body shop to tackle that whole rear end repair with the quarter panel, tail panel section, replacing the rear bumper and reinforcement and that chassis leg, and also replacing the front bumper and repainting parts of the stuff that has clear coat failure. So all of that's coming to be right around $7,000 to $8,000. So his purchase price was $14,000. He's gonna have to spend $7,000 to $8,000 on that. So he's probably gonna be around $22,000 with that. And you know, I'm sure he could probably find somebody cheaper. He probably does have a couple of people near him that he'll probably be able to get it done for a little bit cheaper. But this is at a specialized body shop. So take that into consideration when we're considering these prices. Now, as far as maintenance and mods go, so some of the maintenance that we're gonna end up doing on here, that whole vanos service to make sure that's bulletproofed. We're also gonna be doing an SMG to manual conversion, and we're also gonna be replacing those seals in the back. And we might also end up doing the rod bearings on here because the oil pan is starting to seep, and it also has 125,000 miles. So even though it is a 2006, and I know the 04 and newer E46 M3s had the updated rod bearings, they do still tend to wear out after 150,000 miles. So it's always good, you know, good insurance on doing it ahead of time rather than waiting for something else to mess up. So when we figure in all of those costs, he's probably gonna be in it another $8,000 to $9,000. So it's gonna be a pretty expensive M3, but for him, at least he'll have it the way that he wants it to be, and it's gonna be pretty much bulletproofed, so he's not gonna have to worry about much maintenance items in the future. Now that pretty much concludes this video. We went over most of the car, got most of the estimates. I know a lot of people are gonna be wowed with how much the whole total cost is gonna end up being. And a lot of people were wowed the same way with that E36 M3 that I did this similar style video on. But hey, it is what it is. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. This one is still probably gonna be a winner for the owner because he's gonna, at the end of the day, he's gonna have it the way that he wants it to be. And he's also upgrading from the ZHP, so still a win-win for him. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you're subscribed and stay tuned for more videos on this E46 M3 upgrades, mechanical upgrades, cosmetic stuff, all kinds of stuff on here. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys in our next video.